conservation money to do cost share. That's where the farmer or landowner pays part of it, and the government does some of the engineering and pays part of it. Depending on what the program is, it's usually about 50-50 in what it is, because we have an interest in making sure those practices are out there. Certainly the landowner does as well, but they're not inexpensive things to do. So half of the department's that conservation side. The other half is our regulatory side. It's the weights and measures folks, the gas pump stickers out there. It's to get to every one of those gas pumps, 33,000 gas pumps in a year. We have 10,000 small counter scales at grocery stores that are out there. We have 5,000 truck scales around the state that are ethanol plants or DOT scales, other kinds of scales out there. And depending on what the process is, we get as well to the moisture meters. As grain farmers, we sell our grain based on moisture. There's about 1,200 moisture meters out there as well that we do get to every year. We generally get to most of those every year. We don't get to the big truck scales every year. But there are folks that certify those in between. That's one of the things we're going to have to look at to see, are those places that we can cut back and not fill some positions if we lose some folks out of those areas. So weights and measures, we have meat inspection, we have dairy inspection, so meat inspections at the locker plants, the state inspected facilities, not the federal facilities. We have dairy inspection on dairy farms at dairy processing plants. We have the state veterinarian that looks after animal health. We have surveillance programs looking out for avian influenza. We don't want any influenza, especially high pathogenic influenza that could be in those eggs. That means we couldn't move eggs out of the state, and we got a lot of folks that need those eggs. So we have surveillance programs to try and catch anything, first of all, to keep anything out, but try and catch anything if we find it. We've got folks certainly looking around as well for H1N1 flu, to see if we could find it in any of the hogs around the state. We haven't found anything. We've got a bunch of hogs going into Des Moines this week for the pork expo that's there, and we'll have efforts to be able to pull samples on hogs as well to make sure that if it is there, we find it, and that we certainly prevent it from spreading to others. And that's lots of different activities around animal health that the state vet works with. We have the state climatologist, Harry Hilliker, keeps track of all the weather. He's the one that came up with the numbers. Last year, first 6 months of the year, we had more rain than we had in the last 136 years worth of weather records in the first 6 months through the year statewide. You know, people say it's just because we're farming out there, or it's just because we're tiling, or something else that caused those floods. You know, part of it was we got a lot of rain. Loads of rain. It's hard to handle that much rain. You know, we can look at ways to be able to handle that rain a little bit better as we go forward, but part of it was we just got a lot of rain. So Harry's there. We got the state entomologist as well, works with bugs and plant diseases. We got a emerald ash borer is a borer that can kill ash trees. Right now, they've confirmed it in about 3 miles away from Iowa, in a little town called, is it Liberty? It's I think it's Liberty, Wisconsin, just across the border from Alameda County. And all the time we're pulling samples of stuff here in the state as well to see if we've got it in the state. But it's a little bug. It'll kill ash trees. The only way it really moves around is people move it around when they cut down a tree and carry firewood to a campground. And so right now what we're seeing is it pops up around some of these camping areas. But it can really do a ton of damage. It's killed tens of millions of trees east of here. We don't want it here. If we got it here, we need to restrict movement of it here in the state as well. So lots of pieces, certainly around the department on the regulatory side as well as on the conservation side. One of the things we just did, we did probably a month ago, was put our budget online as well. So you can go to our website, iowaagriculture.gov, and you can look at our budget, each of the program areas. We have about 30 program areas there. You can see what we're spending in each of those, how many people that we have working in each of those. That's certainly part of the material that we took to the legislature when we talked about what we're doing. And we'll have on there what we do for budget cuts as well, where those savings are coming from and what we did in adjusting programs. it seems like this day and age we should be able to do those kinds of things. It's real money and it's taxpayers' money, and we got to figure out a way to be able to make sure that that happens. So, we can talk politics, we can talk agriculture, we can talk whatever you want. We got all kinds of experts that I can't answer a question or dodge a question too. So I'd love to take questions.
With the big industry here, of course, they have top two out in California, which I'll say is going to destroy the egg industry there, more business for us. But is the Department of Agriculture concerned about the activities of HSUS and that sort of legislation, which they're starting to move into the heartland and to work on those issues here? Does that concern your office?
It does. So the question is about Prop 2 was a proposition that passed in California. What they did there was talk about cage sizes and actually sizes of crates for hogs as well, but certainly it'll impact the egg-laying industry in California. And there is a big effort by the Humane Society of the United States to talk about animal care issues. Now, their stated purpose is to get rid of livestock and to not have meat animals at all. Certainly, generally not have pets as well. But they do a lot of pieces in how we care for those pets. So they have had propositions that have passed Florida, have passed Arizona, now California, which is a big state. They are now looking at proposition in Ohio as well. The number 2 egg state is Ohio. Now, some would argue, does that offer us opportunities to be able to go to some of these areas? Because that is likely to shut down much of the egg-laying industry in these states if it happens. And I think there are probably some opportunities to be able to market into some of these areas, but they are concentrating on animal agriculture in a big way. And there's certainly discussions within agriculture here, crop and animal agriculture, saying, what do we need to do to make sure, first of all, we are doing right? That we are treating our livestock right when we're moving them, when they're on the farms, and that we have reasons to be able to give folks that we are doing it. But then when we are, then let's defend ourselves when somebody comes in and gives misinformation about how we're treating those animals. So absolutely, that's a very big concern within all the species groups in the state, within the crop groups as well, because that's where an awful lot of our corn goes. It's where our gluten goes as well as from our ethanol plants. This is a huge issue. One of those huge issues is coming. I'd say there's a series of issues out there in agriculture we have to look at. We have to look at animal care issues, climate change issues. We're going to get a ton of climate change stuff. It used to be global warming until it didn't warm. And we could talk and we could decide that it is happening or isn't happening. The thing is, Washington's decided that it is happening, and there's going to be legislation. And there's lots of pieces. One of the pieces is looking at ethanol itself and saying you can or can't use it based on what's happening in other countries and what farmers are doing to bring land in production. And so you have what's called indirect land use as you look at ethanol production or biodiesel production. But we're going to have it faced right in agriculture and all the things that we're doing out here in processing. And the science is kind of squishy in all this stuff to really figure out how much carbon you use. In fact, those of us in agriculture would argue that carbon coming off of an animal that ate grass, that carbon was in the air, a month ago, is different carbon than carbon coming out of a gas, an exhaust out of a car or natural gas that's used to warm a house. Now, in theory, it's all carbon, and it all can impact the amount of carbon that's in the air, but the carbon that is coming out of our ethanol, that's coming out of our livestock, is carbon that was in the air not too long ago. And what would happen if we didn't use it at all? Let's say we had no livestock anymore, and I guess we all ate grass or whatever. But even if we ate the grass, we'd have some emissions of carbon as well. And so that carbon to me is a different carbon than trying to